process. For those who are watching at home, this is Pete Illoway running for Cheyenne Mayor. We're glad to have you here. I'm Brian Martin. I'm the managing editor, and I want to have the other two editorial board members who are here just introduce themselves briefly so you recognize their voices.
I'm Sharon Fain with the editorial board as a community representative.
And I am Bob Fecht with the editorial board as a community representative.
Well, thank you and good morning. I'm anxious to tell you some of my vision for why I'm running for mayor, and I appreciate always the Tribune Eagle doing this. As Brian knows, I've done this, I think, 7 or 8 times with the editorial board and having been in the legislature and running for Secretary of State. So thank you very much.
So Pete, if you could start by just telling us what specific issues or concerns caused you to run for mayor.
Thank you, Brian, for the question. I've known the present mayor for a long, long time. So I don't want to beat up on the present mayor, but I am concerned with the direction that the city of Cheyenne is going. I did happen to ask a question about the old Fowler's building, which people know as Z's building. And I said, okay, we got it uncondemned, now what? And the answer was, it'll sit there for another 4 years. And I said, that's not what we want in Cheyenne. We need to move ahead and try to clean up the abandoned and vacant buildings downtown. We need to move forward in the city of Cheyenne. We have stayed as a maintainer for about 8 years. The last time we really moved ahead was parking garage and the Depot Plaza and the Belvoir and so forth. We need to move forward, even though maybe the budget's going to be a little bit smaller. If we sit on our thumbs, we'll never get forward in Cheyenne, and I think we need to move forward. And that's one of the impetus that I wanted to, that really made me want to run for mayor and say, my gosh, I can do it.
What qualifications, Pete, do you bring to the table that will help you serve as mayor of Cheyenne?
Thank you, Sharon. Let's go back. In 1963, I moved to Cheyenne, and I have been a resident of Cheyenne and Laramie County since 1963. I graduated from Colorado State University, came up here and went to work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and later went on to the Wyoming Department of Agriculture. And in 1976, I went to move to Coastal Chem, which was Wycon Chemical and now is called Dyno Nobel, and worked there for 21 years, purchasing gas, natural gas, being manager of safety, public relations, and so forth. And then I retired in 1997 or 98, and then ended up and went to work for Randy Bruins at Cheyenne Leads as a vice president at Cheyenne Leads. And at that time, that was one of the times when we bought the North Range Business Park. And at the same time, I ran for the Wyoming legislature and was elected 7 times, served 14 years in the House, and was chairman of one of the 10 standing committees, the Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee. And now I'm a lobbyist. I was a lobbyist actually before I went to work for, got into the legislature. And then when I retired, I went back to lobbying. So I think I do have some good history, the ability to work with people. You can't be in a legislature, you can't be chairman of an important committee without knowing how to work with people, draw people together, have a consensus, and move forward. So that's my qualifications, and I think that will serve me well.
Pete, can I follow up on that just by asking, in the legislature, you're running for a nonpartisan office now, but in that partisan situation, do you think you were able to work across party lines and get things done, or was it, what was the atmosphere like, and how were you able to get people to work together? Maybe it wasn't with the political parties, but how were you able to get people to work together?
I think that's a great question. You cannot pass legislation, no matter whether it's in Wyoming or, as Senator Enzi would say, in Washington, D.C., without working across the aisle. You have got to work with people whether it's your own party or a different party. Everybody has some different ideas, and you need to pull that together. One of the leadership roles that I did play, I was majority whip for one session. But absolutely, you must work together. You must try to have collaboration. You must try to get consensus. If you don't, you cannot pass legislation. If you're one particular area, you just can't get it passed, and you need to be able to stand up, talk about it, draw people together. And you get input from people, right? And you just flat out, that's the only way you can do it.
I actually want to go back to the first question with a follow-up. So you said you used the term a maintainer for 8 years. So if you're mayor, what would be your number one goal for us not being a maintainer?
Well, Bob, thanks. We need to move on a whole bunch of different fronts. First of all, we need to clean up the abandoned buildings downtown. That's one of my 30-day, if I became mayor, I want to move forward and find out who owns them, what their plans are, and why they're not fixing them up. And if there have been people who said, gee, we don't know who owns that building. Wait a minute, it's on the tax roll somewhere, somebody owns it. Let's figure out what's going on and let's move forward. Gateways, entryways to the city looks really nice on the west until you get to the hitching post. What happens? Why can't we get grass? Why can't we clean up the signs? Why can't we make the city look presentable? The other thing is just take a look at, and everybody has talked about their streets, their roads. I drove around Western Hills this morning to see what the water did. And again, it's washing out one of the streets that runs downhill. We need to get back to, and we've maintained, we haven't done anything yet. It's going to take us quite a long time to get back and get the streets back into shape. Why are the streets falling apart? Well, people say it's because of the weather. All right, that has something to do with it, but I do know that if you use concrete and you use the alkali sand, that it really has an effect. Pete Laybourne talked about it 10 years ago on Capitol Avenue. Why are we still using the same engineering and the same way of doing things? We expect a different outcome, but we're doing the same thing. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. They need to be started right away. And I've got a 30-day plan. Let's move forward.
Pete, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing the city?
I think that one of the biggest challenges in Cheyenne is being citizen friendly and business friendly. I hear all kinds of stories from my business friends that talk about the planning department is inflexible. We've talked about the UDC code. It's not an inflexible code. You can work with it. And we need to go through. And when somebody walks in, the answer is not no. It's yes, we can do it. We'll try to work with you and make it happen. That's one of the biggest problems that we have, whether it's in the city proper or it's outside. We've got buildings that somebody wants to tear down or change its footprint. No, you can't change its footprint. It's got to stay the same. You've got to build either up or do something. And you got to work. We have got to learn to work and be flexible and move this city forward. If we don't, we're not going to see the future.
Brian,
Beyond that, you have a question on that one?
yes.
Okay, go ahead. Absolutely. Go for it.
I can't tell you how many examples I have of unfriendly. Tell me how you solve that.
You're not going to solve it in a day. You're not going to solve it in a day, but you're going to, and I assume that you're talking within the government and not outside the government. And It's called an attitude change. And the attitude change has to start with me as mayor and the city council. And it's an attitude change within those folks that are the department heads. And it's going to start, the status quo starts the day I'm sworn in.
So beyond that one priority, what can you name 2 or 3 other challenges facing the city?
One of the big challenges is this next year is when the contract for the firemen are up. And that contract needs to be looked at. I've talked to quite a few people. There are some archaic provisions in the contract. There are some things that need to be looked at in the contract. We need to sit down with the city attorney, whoever that is going to be, and the mayor, and go through the contract and work. 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, it went to arbitration. I don't think we need to do that. We need to work with that contract, and we need to work with people rather than against people. We need to work together. One of the other things that I want to do is with lower budgets, with less money coming from the state, with probably less money coming from sales and use tax, is how do you get more money into the city? How do you do that in its less than 30 square miles? We need to find additional ways of funding. Is that grants? Is that loans? Is that more tourists downtown? Is that building the sky bridge that was originally envisioned from the depot over to the roundhouse? We need to think outside the box. We've sat there and we think, no, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. Now the 5th and 6th penny have been great. And I think we've done some great things with the 6th penny, the Botanic Gardens, the new public safety building, the swimming pool. Great projects. And we need we'll continue with the 6th, I hope, with the 6th, 5th and 6th penny. We need those pennies. But other than that, we need to find additional funding sources. And that's one of my goals.
Pete, I'd like to follow up with that if you don't mind. There's some discussion about the Children's Museum considering some additional possible taxes. Would you support a 7th penny or taxpayer funding for the Children's Museum?
Sharon, I don't know the legality of the museum, but let me say up front, I support the museum. But I don't know the legality of the museum. Is it a public partnership? Is it a private corporation? I don't know. There are lots of needs on the 6th penny that the county commissioners will be looking at. I'm concerned that if we put $20 million, which I think is where the museum is now, we put all $20 million into it, that's half of the funding for the 6th penny, because I think the county commissioners are saying $40 million. So I would be more interested in building the building and then letting them do more fundraising. That's what the Botanic Gardens are doing. They didn't get everything they wanted, and let them go ahead and do more fundraising to finish the inside. We were privileged to look at the Botanic Gardens. They are out fundraising to finish things that the 6th penny did not give them. Great idea. And then you asked about, would you go for the 7th penny, a quarter cent, because the 7th penny is economic development. It's quarter. If you do that, I believe the other cities in Laramie County will take a portion of that. I doubt you're going to talk them into saying, oh yeah, we'll send our money back to Cheyenne. I'd have to take a look at that. I think I was in the legislature when we passed that ability for the 7th penny. I suspect within the next couple of years, we may want to go to this quarter seventh penny because of limited state funds, whether it's for the business council or whatever. So I'm a little hesitant saying yes on the seventh penny, and I'm hesitant about saying build the entire museum with the sixth penny, because first of all, it'll take probably at least 4 years to get it there. And that takes half of the sixth penny, and we have other needs.
Are we on 5? 4? Please describe, I think you've already done this, but your vision for Cheyenne. Are you thinking 4 years as a mayor, 8 years as a mayor, 12 years as a mayor? What's your, you said you have a 30-day plan. You have a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan?
The city has a capital improvement plan. I think it's over $500 million of capital improvements. We'll probably never get there in a lot of our lifetimes. Right now, I'm looking at a plan to move Cheyenne forward. My 30-day plan probably is a 6-month plan. But the first thing is to sit down, look at the budget, and figure out about the fireman's contract. I don't want to go to arbitration with that, and then move forward. You're not going to be able to do everything that you want to do in 30 days. It's going to take you some time. But yes, I've looked at looking at how do we work to get the streets back into shape? How do we work on the core? How do we bring lofts, apartments, grocery store downtown? How do we make downtown an inviting area of the city? The city is about 25, less than 30 square miles. How do we make it so that people want to come downtown? So I have no idea whether it's a 4-year term or an 8-year term. That's up to the voters. But we're certainly going to work towards looking at some capital improvements throughout the entire city.
Pete, I'd like to follow up on the budget. As many of us know, the budget process the last 8 years has been the mayor develops the budget and then unveils it to the city council. Do you believe that there should be a more inclusive process where the city council, people that we've elected to office, are in on the process, the development of the budget on the front end, as opposed to a surprise party at the end?
Absolutely, Sharon. Having been in the legislature, one of my real pet peeves, even with the legislature, is, oh, here's the budget. Appropriations committees worked all on it. They look at it, they work on it for a month before the legislature, and here it is, and you're going to have 3 days to go through it. It is not, that's not the process, and that's not the process I, as mayor, would want to do. I think it needs to be a collaboration. You need to pull, you got to have the department heads, and you ought to have the city council. And if you have a group of folks that you've asked to give some input, absolutely. And it ought to start now, so to speak, or early in the year before the budget. I've criticized the surprise budgets. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody has the input, and I think that's wrong.
As a follow-up, Pete, to your vision for Cheyenne, what do you think the community needs besides the downtown needs that you talked about? What does the community need now that it doesn't have, and how would you go about getting that for Cheyenne?
Thank you, Brian. And I've talked to numerous people about input and inclusiveness. When my friend the mayor first got in, I said, why don't you have kind of a kitchen cabinet outside the city council and ask those folks what their ideas are for the city? A whole bunch of ideas, and just sit around a table and talk about what is their vision, what do they think? And for 8 years, nothing has been done. I'm really sorry, because there are people in Cheyenne that have some very, very good ideas about how to do things in the city. we're going to see a huge annexation probably within the next 4 years, and that's the Lomas Ranch. I think we need to know how those things will work with the people on that particular area. But more important is we go ahead and include open green space and hand it off to Rick Parrish and Parks and Recreation. And we don't give him any more money. We end up and we include areas in the city, and we don't give Brian Kozak any more police, whether they're foot patrols or whether they're car patrols. We have a fire department, and they need to build 2 new firehouses. Well, I'd like to have some input. They have some thoughts on where those firehouses should go. Quite frankly, are they the best areas? They could be, but I think you need to get input from people. We don't get any input. And one thing, Brian, which will interest you, next year is the 150th anniversary of the city of Cheyenne, July 5th. I think that's correct. Has anybody seen any input from anybody throughout the city that says we ought to have a celebration? We ought to have coins made. We ought to do something to say it's 150 years. But I haven't seen anything. I don't think anybody else has, which I think is wrong. We are not using people in Cheyenne to talk to listen to see what their thoughts are. That's where I want to be.
How would you change that? I mean, you have city council meetings, and how do you get those people engaged where they feel that their ideas are respected and will be truly considered?
It's not necessarily the city council. It's other people. Your husband, you. There are people in the community that have some really good ideas. Let's go ask them to be a part of or give us some ideas. The Tribune Eagle has a page that says, how do we be more things to people? Answer this and we'll give you 2 tickets to Frontier Days. You're asking the citizens of Cheyenne that read the Tribune Eagle what they would like to see. We can do the same thing with the population in Cheyenne and ask people to give some ideas, to think about how do we do things in Cheyenne? What do we do? If we don't do that, we end up with the budget that is put together by one person, and it's a one vision person. This is a large city, 63,000 people. We need to have an openness, and we need to gather people together and ask questions. Maybe you only do it every 6 months. Maybe you do it every 3 months. Maybe you do it every month. I don't know, but I'm willing to start to talk to people. Years ago, back about 1982, I served on a citizen advisory committee for the Stage 2 water project. You couldn't build that consensus without getting people together to talk about, look at maps, listen to people, and move forward. And we passed it. I mean, we have Stage 2 water. So,
Pete, so you meet with folks in a variety of different formats, but you know as well as I do, you're going to hear different things. You're going to hear people who want Cheyenne to stay the way it is, to stay small. You're going to hear people who say, we're not growing fast enough. There isn't enough for people to do here. I have teenagers who have struggled to find things to do, other than just staying home and playing video games. But where are the public centers, those sorts of things? So if you'll get a little more specific about what you think Cheyenne doesn't have, and then maybe which side of that argument do you find yourself on? More growth is better, or let's keep Cheyenne where it is right now?
Well, Brian, you're not going to keep Cheyenne the way it is anyhow, because it will continue to grow as a city because of annexation. And the core is, I think, what we're really talking about. Years ago, when I first came here and 63 and 66 in that area. Cheyenne had stores downtown. It had things going on downtown. And then, oh yes, the mall got built and everybody moved out. Well, we haven't done anything downtown to entice people back downtown. Do we need more restaurants? We've got a couple new home brews, I guess is what you want to call them, small breweries. That's bringing people downtown. We need to have some activities. I saw the other day that there's a children's museum in one particular town, and they've got parked a bunch of trucks, and the kids are downtown learning how to drive trucks. And kids love trucks. Kids love to do things. Kids bring parents downtown. Let's do some more things on the plaza. The Corps is looking at the spray park. You're not going to build downtown in a day, but you ought to have some ideas what to do. Do we need more parking? Don't know. There's a parking plan now that's just was kicked off. We were at that meeting last week. But are there some other things that can be done? The steam plant is looking at redevelopment. Are there more liquor licenses that can be given? Now, liquor isn't necessarily the end all and to do things, but on the other hand, if there are some park licenses, they should be available to people that want to do something. So I don't have an instant gratification that says going to do it this way. It's going to take time because it took time to leave. But there are some areas downtown that need to be revamped. We need to look at storefronts. We need to be citizen friendly. We need to be business friendly, and we need to move it.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on a different one.
Go ahead, Bob.
So you mentioned a possible big annexation, which is the development that out by LCCC, I believe you're referring to.
That would be correct.
Do you believe that to get there, we would also do the South Cheyenne Sewer and Water District as an annexation?
I don't know, Bob. Annexation needs to be done carefully. My understanding is that there's an annexation in the works to pick up some land, industrial road area that would be close to the Lemus Ranch, and I don't know how many acres that would annex, whether it would be done all at once. I hadn't even thought about the South Cheyenne Water and Sewer District. Those are things that if they come, they're going to have to be done very, very carefully because of money and people, and annexation is not a subject that you really want to get into a debate about because there's pros here and cons there. I don't want to be forced to do this. So I don't know. It's something to study and something to look at.
Pete, you've mentioned your background starting in the legislature, industry here with Dinah Nobel, and also economic development with Cheyenne Leads. Give us an example of sort of your supervisory management experience, maybe your management philosophy, and how would you apply that to serving as mayor?
I think one of the best ways is that you grow as you start working in your young life. You grow forwards. As I say, I graduated from CSU. Some people don't like that, but that's Colorado State University in Fort Collins. But in your young life, you start working with people, and that was one of the things that I did with U.S. Department of Agriculture. I hired people to do surveys throughout the state, and in the Wyoming Department of Agriculture, of course, worked around the state in weed and pest control districts. At that time, there were 13. They're now 23. Worked within wasn't actually the legislature that I worked with, although that I did start to understand the legislative process. And then as I went to Wycon and Coastal Chem, bought natural gas, was manager of safety, was manager of public relations, did a lot of those things at Wycon and Coastal Chem. And then as I got into Cheyenne Leads, it was a small office, as many of you know, but on the other hand, we still had to work with people. We had to work within the confines of, I remember trying to get somebody to build a plant out at Egbert. And we worked for months trying to get that done. It never came to fruition because they didn't want to be that far out. But you still learn to work with people. And then in the legislature, having learned to work with people and try to get a consensus and to collaborate with other folks, that's the only way you can do anything in the legislative process. So I think that gives me that experience in how to work with people. It's a 9-member city council, and there's numerous department heads. The department heads, you need to have good department heads. You need to have faith in what they do, and you need to find out how they're doing, but you don't micromanage it. That's what you hire them for. You hire department heads to do the job. And as mayor, you sit back, so to speak, and make sure that those managers do the right thing.
And a follow-up to that, let's talk about staffing. There've been some folks who've said that Cheyenne may be overstaffed in comparison to Casper and the population and services that are offered. What do you think? Is it perfect? Is it overstaffed? Is it just right? What are your thoughts on that?
And that's, thank you. And I did ask the city treasurer about that. And she said, well, don't forget that Board of Public Utilities is part of the city of Cheyenne, and they're counted, and some people, and Casper doesn't have that. Overstaffed, there's 585 people working for the city of Cheyenne. I think that there are probably some areas where there can be areas that you can pull together some units. Board of Public Utilities has similar people that the city treasurer's office has. Do they need to have the same HR, accountants and so forth as the treasurer has? Maybe there's a way to pull that group together, talk to both the city council and the Board of Public Utilities and see if we can save money on both sides. As far as I said, we give the Rick Parish, the Parks and Recreations, we give them more land without more people or money. When we annex something or we decide we want a city park over here, or the Botanic Gardens, great projects, but we don't give them any more money, and then we expect them to do the same with more land and less people, or maybe not less people, but on the other hand, we still say, do more, but you're not going to get any more people. It's really a tough area, and I think that as mayor, I would certainly sit down with those folks just as soon as possible and ask them, where are you? What do you need? I am not a happy camper with our public safety that's gone on and what happened this last week with the police department and the fire department. I think the police department, Brian Kozak probably does the best job of any person I've seen in a long time. I'm tickled to death with the way they're doing in the new public safety building. I think it's great, but they are approximately 11 people short. And if we expect to have public safety, whether it's in the parking garage, the Spiker parking garage, or it's out in some area of Cheyenne doing with them doing a drive-by, we need to support our public safety folks, and especially the police department. As far as taking a look at the fire department, they have told me they need two. They have two firehouses proposed. I certainly want to make sure that the citizens think that where those are proposed is appropriate, but they're going to need staffing too. The more that you put a firehouse with people, your insurance rates can go down. The other thing is we need to take a look at the contract with the ambulance service. We require fire trucks to go out on ambulance runs. Is that appropriate? Does 911, when they answer a call, is there a way they can say, no fire truck needed or whatever? We need to look at the contract with AMR and see whether that's being followed. So there are lots of things to look at. And I don't know whether to come back and say, we're overstaffed, or I suspect we're not understaffed. And what would we do? I think probably take a look at just exactly what Casper has said. Early retirement, do not fill, freeze jobs, freeze where we are, and then take a look and see exactly what's going on.
Pete, as a follow-up to that, it leads into conversation about your budget and savings priorities. At a time when revenues decreasing, potentially has potential to decrease even faster, depending on what happens with the boom and bust cycle, and as you mentioned, even sales tax. If you find those needs, where are you going to find the money? So it seems that you're passionate about public safety and more money for more police officers, or maybe higher salaries to keep them. If you want more money for Parks and Rec, you identify those in the first part of your term. Then where do you anticipate going and finding the money to fund those?
I don't think there's anything instant, Brian, to find money. City treasurer thinks we're probably okay for this time, but by 2018 we will be short if we haven't found some new sources, so to speak, or if the state hasn't come back and so forth. Quite frankly, there's no instant, gee whiz, I want money, and we snap our fingers and it comes. But tourism dollars pays, and we need to try to find how do we bring more people either to the city to purchase houses and pay sales tax and property tax, or how do we bring more tourist dollars to us. Frontier Days does a great job, but it's only one piece of the pie. It's 2 or 3 weeks out of 52. How do we continue with the other 48 weeks? And that's what I said. I want to go to the Union Pacific Railroad as soon as possible and say, okay, we did the bridge, we did the fences over the viaduct. That's what you wanted us to do. We haven't come back to you and said, now how can we build a sky bridge over to the Roundhouse? There are thousands upon thousands of people that want to see those trains over there in the center of the yard. How do we get them there? How do we get, and if you talk about more dollars, those are instantaneous tourist dollars that come to the city. They spend money in restaurants. They spend money in motels. Maybe they'll spend 2 or 3 days looking at those trains. People love trains. So let's try to work with that and to take a look if there's a way to do it. How to do it, Brian, I don't know. But there's got to be a way. And if we say we can't do it, you're damn right, we can't do it. And one of my goals is it's a can-do attitude. And this thing has got to stop of saying, well, we can't do that. And you're damn sure we can't do it if we say we can't do it.
So that comes back to your attitude the day you take office and passing that attitude off to the rest of the department heads and so forth. There are so many examples of problems with building. To this day, I can pull examples for you where these plans are approved, they've been submitted, they've gone through the entire process, and now we're out and these plans are built, but we can't occupy yet because we gotta make changes. How do you change that attitude? Mayor.
That is not the $64 question. The $64 question is somebody has to make a decision. I used to work for a man in this state, and his comment was, I say yes 95% of the time, and the other 5% I might have been a little hasty. And by damn, it's time we started making decisions. And if it has to come from the top, then make it. And you work in consensus with the city council. The city council is smart people. They're waiting for somebody to be there to make some decisions and to move forward. But this thing, and it's not only you that talks to me about plans and footprints and we can't do this and this is the only way it's going to work and therefore, oh gee, we made a mistake. There's going to be some changes. There has to be some changes in the planning department and the UDC looking at the code. There has to be, Bob. You're in charge of the animal shelter. You know as well as I do, and you were police chief, things have to change and you cannot say it can't be done. And that's my attitude. The status quo stops, Bob. And if you're saying instantly tell me what you're going to do, no, I'm not going to do that, because right now I'm not mayor and I'm running. And if people want to see a can-do attitude, elect me.
Pete, how do you change a culture? You know, I mean, you've had this going on for 8 years and you've been in leadership positions. Do you have a history of changing a culture or that group think to a more positive way of doing business?
I think it has to start at the top. It has to start at the top, and it works down, and you work with people, and you have people that have ethics in government, that have ethics in what they want to do. I mean, I've heard stories that that people have walked in the mayor's office and say, I want to tell you something. It ain't going to change. We like it the way it is. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that people don't want to change and we don't want to see a positive attitude. My attitude and my enthusiasm, and I'm optimistic about this city and I want to see it move forward. We're going to do it one bite of the elephant at a time, but we're going to get it done.
Pete, talk to us about the development of the Belvoir Ranch and the investment that the city made there. What are your thoughts about why it hasn't been developed to this point, and what would you do to get things moving, or is that a priority for you?
The Belvoir Ranch, if I'm correct, and I remember when it was bought, there's water, and I've been over to Boku and talked to them about the water on the Belvoir Ranch, and I know a little bit about that because right now Dino Nobel has wells out there. It's good water. It was bought because we thought we needed another landfill site. Our present landfill has received some good news from DEQ. Looks like that the present landfill will be good for at least 30 years. They're working through the permitting process and so forth. That being said, we still need to keep our eye on the Belvoir for landfill. But we need, here again, I'm saying Rick Parrish with his merry band of folks that know how to lay out bike paths, that you put bridle paths out there, you put walking paths out there. There's any number of recreation opportunities on the Belvoir. And I'm not going to say that I know anything about recreation except you hire people, and we have people in city government that understand recreation and how to lay things out. The Belvoir is ours. I suspect in not any of our lifetimes here, but that will be one of the best decisions that was ever made for the city of Cheyenne. not only for water, but possibly for landfill, for maybe for additional housing, for recreation opportunities like a golf course, like trails to get to the big hole in Colorado, to take a look at some things. It's an opportunity, and you're saying, well, gee whiz, people want to live in Cheyenne, but they don't have anything to do. Well, how about the Belvoir and some opportunities of doing some hiking? And if you're a horse enthusiast, is taking your horse and riding out there, or bicycles, or there's any number of things that can be done on the Belvoir. I don't think we've thrown far enough through it. We've got Scott Roybal is kind of, as the city councilman, is spearheading that. I think it needs to be worked with people like Parks and Recreation. That's what Parks and Recreation is. Let's get some ideas from them. Let's get some input from some of the citizens in Cheyenne. What would you like to see in the Belvoir? I don't know, but I'm sure that there's, out of 63,000 people, I'll bet you get 1,000 ideas what you can do with the Belvoir. So let's try it. Let's see what's going on.
Why has nothing been done so far from your perspective?
It's the same thing. Why haven't the streetlights been put up on 17th Street? This is, again, we're going to maintain Cheyenne. We're not going to do anything that upsets the apple cart. We're not going to make people mad. It's much easier to maintain something than to move forward. That's not me. If you don't want to move forward, if you don't want to see things happen, if you don't want to see growth, elect somebody else. Go ahead, Bob. I know you well. I've been around you a long time.
So there is a small committee working on opening up to the big hole. There's a possibility that they may present a $2 to $4 million request for the 6th penny to move that forward. There are a variety of city staff involved in that. So that may be the first step.
But again, Bob, I want some citizen input too. I know enough about the 6th penny that that's a tough situation, 6th penny. We could put a dozen things on it. The county commissioners narrow it down, juggle it back and forth. But I'm sorry, the 6th penny ideas should come from the citizens too. It should be input from the citizens. Maybe the Tribune Eagle wants to put something out and say, hey, 6th penny's coming up in next year, early in 2017. What are your thoughts for the 6th penny? I don't know. But I don't think I've seen any input from anybody. There's the city improvement plan, and those are wish lists. But I'd like to see some input from the citizens. I'd like to hear from you. What would you like to see out there? Now, you live outside the city. I know where you live. But there are people that have some ideas. Why don't we use them?
So one of the things we want to ask about is 6th penny. So we hear what you're saying about asking residents, what are your priorities? If you were to sit down right now as mayor of Cheyenne and create a list, what would be your top priorities on that list, and what things do you think should be included?
Brian, thanks. One of my top priorities is, I think, the Christensen Road overpass. That's East Cheyenne. That helps those folks out in the East Business Park with insurance costs. It also gives a way for city services, fire, police, even the sheriff's office to get out there if there's something needed. There's a fire station out there that's on the far east end of the business park. Do we need another fire station? No, but that's a fire station out there that can be, I think it was built at one time as a fire station, but also a training area. But you can't get there. we need to put the Christensen Road overpass. We've taken a look at getting federal dollars. That has fallen through any number of times. We need to put the Christensen Road overpass on the 6th penny and do that. As far as other 6 pennies, there are any number of projects, as Bob has talked about, using the Belvoir for developing the Belvoir. Don't know how much money that is. And I haven't gone any further than to say that we may need to look at, and whether it's a 6 penny or not, we may need to look at the city taking over some of these vacant buildings and taking care of some of the real problems in downtown Cheyenne. That may not be done this time because of the 6 penny, but we may look at it on the 6 penny in 2020 or 2021, whenever it comes back. There are some problems with things in downtown Cheyenne, and we need to look at those.
How would you hold those absentee landowners or building owners? How would you hold them accountable? Are you looking at fines? Are you looking at what would you consider?
Sharon, it's a great question, and without knowing the total statutes on property tax, if somebody fixes up their building, their property tax should go down. If somebody leaves their building looking like crap, their property tax should go up because somebody's got to take care of that building. So is there a way that you can quietly fine them, so to speak, for not keeping their building up and giving somebody extra kudos, so to speak, for really making their building look nice? Don't know, but it's a thought. It may be a legislative thought, but those are things that we think about.
The city has a contract with the United Way to oversee disbursement of some funds to a series of nonprofits. What do you think of that arrangement, that agreement?
I could tell you that I do, and I do agree with it, and I don't agree with it. I think it's, on one hand, it should be left up to United Way. I'm not sure the city should be putting their, so to speak, the camel's nose in the tent. It may be where United Way, I mean, you're more familiar with United Way than I am, but it may be the best way that's done. Doesn't sound very good to me that the city's nose is in the tent.
Let me make sure I understand. So some city funds do get eventually dispersed to a series of nonprofits for supporting members of our community. Do you agree with that concept or disagree with that concept?
If you're talking about maybe Camilla Shelter and some of the others, we do need to take care of those folks that are homeless. And if that's the best way to do it, we do need to take care of the homeless situation in Cheyenne. I know that some of the bridges are used for homes. That's not really the best place for people, and especially in the cold weather and so forth. So if that's the best way to do it, I think that if you're going to give money to somebody, depending on how much it is, and I didn't look at the budget on that particular item, we do need to take care of that homeless population of the city, and that's probably the best way to do it.
I wanted to ask you about the possibility of an anti-discrimination ordinance. It's been thrown around in Cheyenne, and other communities have dealt with it. Do you feel that Cheyenne needs an anti-discrimination ordinance? And if so, what would it look like?
Brian, under my being mayor, there will be no discrimination, absolutely none. In the city, if somebody walks in, I don't care their preference. That's not where if they can do the job, you hire them. So there is no discrimination under my watch. The second thing, do we need it? Some people think we do, some people think we don't. That's probably one of those where we end up with a hearing if you come up with an ordinance. I know that there's a proposal out there. I'm not sure that's the best proposal. Laramie seemed to think they needed one, and they got an anti-discrimination ordinance. I'd want to take a look at that, but I'd want to take a look at some other cities and see, especially in light of just what happened yesterday in Florida. This is absolutely ridiculous. This state has had a diversity of peoples from Chinese working for the railroad to the Japanese that were moved from the West Coast to the Mexicans that work in Jackson. We have a huge diversity of folks in this state, and it needs to stay that way. We need to be open, and there should be absolutely no discrimination. If we need an anti-discrimination policy, so be it. We'll move forward with it, and we'll work very diligently to make it one of the best in the nation.
But what I hear you saying is you're not happy with what you've seen or what you've heard about the one that's drafted, maybe coming forward now. What is it about that you don't like?
I'm not sure. Brian, anti-discrimination means no discrimination. No putting somebody on a pedestal or something like that. I don't want to have any discrimination, and I'm not going to talk to you because I'm not an authority on what's going on in city council. I do believe that we do not want any discrimination in this city, and that's where I am.
We have about maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. I just wonder if there's anything that we've talked about or anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to let us know about as we wrap up.
Well, thank you. I hope you've asked all the questions. One of I liked a particular quote that I found several months ago, and it was said by a president that a lot of us know, but he said, change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. And I don't want Cheyenne to be there, because I think that we have looked to the past and said, gee whiz, the city's fine. And we look at the present and we said, we're doing okay. But I think if we don't move forward and look to the future, we'll miss it. And the future is out there. And if we continue to sit on our thumbs and say, gee whiz, we don't have enough money, we can't do this, I want to do it myself, we will miss the future. And you're younger than I am, and Bob's younger than I am, and Sharon's got a child that's 13, and she's younger than I am. And we need to prepare for the future, and we need to prepare for our children. And that's what I want to try and do, is to move forward, because I think there's a future for Cheyenne. And I think we just need to talk to people. There's no reason we can't go out and get the folks that own the hitching post to put in grass and take the signs down and make it look halfway decent. We just need to go talk. We just need to go out and see. Let's begin. Let's do something. That's why I want to be mayor. Does that work, guys?
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate your time. Thanks again for being here and agreeing to meet with us.